I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer anyway. Hi, is this Madison Chen? I'm calling about the lake house on Willow Creek Drive. We're the new owners, and we found some mail addressed to you in the mailbox. My blood went cold. I'm sorry, what did you say? The lake house, we just bought it last month. Beautiful property, by the way. But there's been mail piling up for you, and we wanted to make sure you got it forwarded. The room started spinning. There must be some mistake. That's my house. I never sold any house. There was an awkward pause. Mom, I have the deed right here. It shows the previous owners as Robert and Linda Chen. Are those your parents, perhaps? I hung up without another word and immediately called my parents' house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. Madison, honey, how are you? Mum's voice was unusually cheerful. Mum, I just got a call about the lake house. Someone says they bought it from you and Dad. Silence, then a nervous laugh. Oh, that. Well, we were going to tell you. Tell me what exactly? Sweetie, you hardly ever use that place anymore. And with Sarah's wedding coming up, we needed the money. It's for family, Madison. Sarah needs this wedding to be perfect. I couldn't breathe. The lake house wasn't just any property. It was the last connection I had to my grandmother, the one person in my family who had ever truly understood me. Let me take you back to when I was 16. Grandma Rose had called me into her hospital room, her frail hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Madison, sweetheart, I want you to have the lake house when I'm gone. Grandma, don't talk like that. Listen to me. Her voice was firm despite the oxygen tube. That house has been in our family for 60 years. Your grandfather built it with his own hands. But your parents, they see dollar signs where they should see memories. You're the only one who understands what that place really means. She squeezed my hand tighter. Promise me you'll take care of it. Promise me you won't let them sell it for some fleeting thing. I promised. 2 weeks later, she was gone. The reading of the will was brutal. Mum and Dad sat there, faces growing redder by the minute, as the lawyer read out the terms. The lake house, worth about $200,000 even back then, was left entirely to me. This is ridiculous, Dad had exploded. She's 16. She can't handle property. The will is very clear, Mr. Chen, the lawyer had said calmly. Madison is the sole owner. You can serve as trustees until she's 18, but the property belongs to her. Mum was crying, not sad tears, angry ones. Mother always played favourites. This is so unfair to Sarah. But Sarah, only 13 at the time, didn't seem to care about some old lake house. She was too busy texting her friends about getting her braces off. That's when I should have seen the pattern clearly, but I was too young to understand it then. In our family, everything was about Sarah. Sarah's dance recitals, Sarah's boyfriend drama, Sarah's college applications, Sarah's career struggles. I was the responsible one, the one who took care of herself, so I got less attention. And somehow, in my parents' minds, that meant I deserved less. When I turned 18 and legally took full control of the lake house, I thought things might change. I had graduated as valedictorian, gotten a full scholarship to Northwestern, landed a summer internship at a prestigious marketing firm. Surely now they'd see me as someone worth celebrating. I came home that summer, excited to share my plans, hoping maybe we could have a family barbecue at the lake house to celebrate my achievements. Mom, Dad, I was thinking we could... Madison, perfect timing, Mom interrupted. Sarah just got accepted to her dream college and we're taking her out to dinner to celebrate. You can watch the house while we're gone, right? But what about my internship? I wanted to tell you... That's nice, honey. We'll talk about it later. This is Sarah's big day. I watched them leave, all dressed up, chattering excitedly about Sarah's future. I hadn't even told them that my internship had offered me a position after graduation, or that I'd been nominated for a National Academic Award. None of it mattered. Sarah got into college, the same college hundreds of kids get into every year. And that was apparently more worthy of celebration than anything I'd ever accomplished. That night, I drove to the lake house alone. I sat on the dock where Grandma and I used to fish, watching the sunset paint the water gold and orange. That's when I made a promise to myself. I would never again expect them to put me first, but I also wouldn't let them take away the one thing that was truly mine. Fast forward 10 years. I'm 28 now, a senior marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company. I've bought my own condo in downtown Chicago, traveled to 15 countries, and built a life I'm proud of. But I still keep that lake house. It's my sanctuary, the place I go when the city gets too loud, or when I need to remember who I am beneath all the professional success. Every few months, my parents would hint about money troubles. Dad's consulting business wasn't doing well. Mum's part-time job barely covered their expenses. And then there was Sarah. Sweet, beautiful, dramatic Sarah, who at 25 had finally found her Prince Charming, a hedge fund manager named Bradley with a trust fund and a BMW. Their engagement party cost more than most people's weddings, but somehow they needed even more for the actual ceremony. Madison, you're so successful now, Mum would say during our monthly phone calls. Could you maybe help out with Sarah's wedding? Just a little contribution? I'd already given them $5,000 for the engagement party venue, another $3,000 for Sarah's dress, and $1,500 for the flowers. When they asked for more, I finally put my foot down. Mum, I just put a down payment on my condo. I can't keep funding this wedding. But she's your sister. This is her special day. And I've already contributed $8,500. That's more than most wedding guests spend in a lifetime. The guilt trips started immediately. I was being selfish. I was jealous of Sarah's happiness. I was forgetting what family meant. But I held firm. I had my own life to build, my own financial goals to meet. I should have known they'd find another way. Standing in my office that day, still holding the phone after hanging up on the confused new owners of my lake house, I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. That had been broken by my family too many times to count. This was something deeper, my trust maybe, my last thread of hope that blood might actually mean something. I called my parents back. Madison, honey, how could you do this? My voice was quieter than I expected. Sweetheart, let us explain. Grandma left that house to me, not to the family, to me. She made that choice for a reason. Dad got on the line. Madison, you're being dramatic. It's just a house, and Sarah's wedding is in 6 weeks. We already put deposits down everywhere. Just a house? I was shaking. Dad, Grandpa built that house with his hands. Grandma grew up there. I have pictures of 4 generations of our family on that dock, and you sold it like it was some random investment property. We can buy it back later, Mom chimed in, when things are better financially. For what? Twice the price? 3 times? Do you have any idea what lake properties are worth now? Madison, you're 28 years old. You live in a fancy condo in the city. When do you even go there anymore? The question hit me like a slap. When did I go there? Every time they disappointed me. Every time I felt alone in my own family. Every time I needed to remember that I had roots somewhere. That I belonged to something bigger than myself. I go there more than you think, I said quietly. Well, it's done now, Dad said with finality. The money's already been spent on wedding deposits. Sarah's dress, the venue, the catering, we can't get it back. That's when it hit me. They hadn't just sold my house without permission. They'd spent the money before even telling me. This wasn't some desperate last-minute decision. This was planned, calculated, deliberate. Did you forge my signature? I asked. Another pause. Madison, you're our daughter. We were just helping manage your assets. Did you forge my signature? We did what we had to do for this family, Mum said defensively. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. Robert Rodriguez had been my attorney since I graduated college. He'd helped me with my condo purchase, my employment contracts, and setting up my investment accounts. When I explained the situation, his usually calm demeanour shifted. Madison, this is fraud. Clear, prosecutable fraud. I know, but they're my parents. They stole a $200,000 property from you and sold it without your knowledge or consent. The relationship doesn't change the law. I sat in his office that afternoon, staring at the legal documents he'd pulled up. The deed transfer showed my signature, but it wasn't my signature. It was close, too close for a stranger to catch, but I knew my own handwriting. What are my options? I asked. We can file for fraud, have the sale declared invalid, and force the return of the property. The current buyers would get their money back from your parents, and you'd get your house back. And if my parents don't have the money anymore? Then they'd owe it, with interest and potential criminal charges for fraud and forgery. I thought about Sarah's wedding, 6 weeks away, the deposits, the dress, the venue, the 150 guests who'd already made plans. The humiliation my parents would face if their fraud was exposed. Then I thought about my grandmother holding my hand in that hospital bed. About the promise I'd made, about the 60 years of family history they'd sold for a party that would last one day. Do it, I said. File the papers. Madison, are you sure once we start this process? They made their choice when they forged my signature. I'm just making mine. There's one more thing, Rodriguez said carefully. Since the wedding is in 6 weeks, we could time the service of papers strategically. They'll need to be notified of the legal action, but we could choose when that happens. I thought about all the times they'd pushed me aside for Sarah's big moments, all the celebrations I'd missed, all the achievements they'd ignored, all the ways they'd made it clear that I was the spare, not the heir. Serve them at the wedding, I said. Rodriguez raised an eyebrows. Madison, that's quite nuclear. They made this public when they sold my house to fund a party. They want to celebrate with my inheritance? Fine, let's celebrate. Walking out of that law office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to my family. Power. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to prove my worth or begging for scraps of attention. For once, I held the cards. But first, I had a wedding to attend and a performance to give. The next 6 weeks were surreal. Mum called me constantly with wedding updates as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't committed fraud against her own daughter. Madison, you'll love the flowers we picked. Sarah chose white roses with gold accents. It's going to be so elegant. Sarah found the perfect shoes. They're Jimmy Choos, but worth every penny. The cake tasting was amazing. 4 tiers with real gold leaf. Every call felt like salt in a wound. My house, my grandmother's house, was being transformed into wedding decorations and designer shoes and gold-leafed cake. 60 years of family history reduced to party supplies. But I played along. I even volunteered to help with last-minute preparations. "Oh, Madison, that's so sweet of you," Mum gushed. "I knew you'd come around. Family is everything, after all." Family. The word had started to taste bitter in my mouth. 3 days before the wedding, Sarah called me herself. "Madison, I just wanted to thank you. I know you didn't support the wedding financially like Mom and Dad hoped, but I know you're making sacrifices to be there. It means everything to me to have my big sister at my wedding." If only she knew what sacrifices had actually been made, and by whom. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Sarah," I said, and I meant it. I absolutely would not miss this wedding. "I love you, Madison. I know we haven't always been super close, but you're the best sister anyone could ask for." That almost broke my resolve. Almost. Because Sarah wasn't the villain here, she was just the golden child who'd been trained her entire life to expect that everything would be handed to her, no questions asked. She probably didn't even know where the money for her wedding had really come from. But intention doesn't erase impact. And the impact was that my inheritance, my sanctuary, my last connection to the grandmother who'd loved me unconditionally was gone, sold, transformed into a single day of celebration for someone who'd never appreciated what we'd lost to give it to her. The night before the wedding, I drove past the lake house one last time before the legal papers were served. The new owners had already started making changes. New curtains in the windows, a different car in the driveway, children's toys scattered on the lawn where Grandma's carefully tended flower garden used to be. I parked by the old oak tree where I'd carved my initials when I was 12, and I made a new promise. Not to my grandmother this time, but to myself. Tomorrow I would get justice. Tomorrow I would stop being the family member who quietly accepted whatever scraps they threw me. Tomorrow I would remind them that blood might make you family, but respect makes you worthy of it. And if they didn't like the lesson, they should have thought about that before they stole from me. The wedding was beautiful, I had to admit. Sarah looked stunning in her designer gown. The venue was decorated like something out of a fairy tale, and the 200-person guest list buzzed with admiration for the elaborate celebration. I wore my best dress, smiled at all the right moments, and waited. The ceremony was flawless. Sarah glided down the aisle in her $4,000 dress, tears streaming down Dad's face as he walked her to the altar. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, whispering to relatives about how perfect everything looked. The flower arrangements funded by my grandmother's house created a winter wonderland of white roses and gold accents. I sat in the third row, watching it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. Everyone kept commenting on how beautiful the wedding was, how much it must have cost, how lucky Sarah was to have parents who could afford such an elaborate celebration, if they only knew the real price. During the reception, I mingled politely, complimented the bride, danced with distant relatives, and played the role of the supportive sister. But my phone was tucked in my clutch, and I was tracking Rodriguez's messages. Papers ready for service. Sheriff standing by, awaiting your signal. The moment came during dinner. Dad stood up, tapping his champagne glass with a fork to get everyone's attention. The room gradually quieted, 200 faces turning toward him expectantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," he began, his voice carrying across the elegant ballroom. "Linda and I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate Sarah and Bradley's special day." Applause rippled through the crowd. Sarah beamed from the head table, her hand intertwined with Bradley's. "Planning a wedding like this isn't easy," Dad continued, and I felt my stomach tighten. "It takes sacrifice, compromise, and sometimes creative thinking. But when you love your daughter as much as we love Sarah, you'll do whatever it takes to give her the wedding of her dreams." More applause. Several people were reaching for tissues. "But tonight, I want to give special thanks to someone who made this all possible, even though she doesn't know it yet." Dad's eyes found mine across the room and he smiled. "Our daughter Madison has always been the responsible one, the independent one. She's built such a successful career, and we're so proud of her." I forced a smile, my hand moving to my phone. "Madison, honey, could you stand up?" Every eye in the room turned to me. Sarah was grinning, looking confused but delighted. I stood slowly, my heart hammering. "Madison has always been generous with family," Dad continued, "but her biggest gift to Sarah came from something she wasn't even using anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Madison's generous wedding present, we sold her lake house to pay for this beautiful celebration." The room erupted in applause. People were turning to look at me with admiration, commenting on what a wonderful sister I was. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "Madison," she called out over the applause. "Oh my God, I had no idea. Thank you so much." Mum was beaming, raising her glass toward me. "To Madison for understanding what family really means." The entire room raised their glasses in a toast to my supposed generosity. 200 people celebrating my gift while I stood there, knowing the truth about how that gift was obtained. I smiled widely and raised my own glass. "Thank you so much, everyone. That's so kind." I paused, letting the room quiet slightly. "I'm just happy I could contribute to Sarah's special day. And Mom, Dad, you should really check your mail when you get home tonight." Dad laughed. "Always thinking ahead, our Madison, even at a wedding." "Always," I agreed, still smiling as I sent a quick text. "Now." The applause died down and people began returning to their conversations and dinner. Sarah blew me a kiss from across the room, and several relatives came over to tell me what a thoughtful sister I was. I accepted their praise graciously, checking my phone every few minutes. Papers served to venue security, ETA 5 minutes. The salad course was being cleared when the ballroom doors opened. I watched from my table as 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies entered, followed by a man in a suit I recognized as Rodriguez. They spoke quietly with the venue coordinator, who pointed toward my parents' table. The room's energy began to shift as people noticed the official-looking visitors. Conversations became hushed. Sarah looked confused, glancing between the deputies and her new husband. The deputies approached my parents' table with the calm professionalism of people who'd done this hundreds of times before. One of them leaned down and spoke quietly to my father. I watched Dad's face change from confusion to alarm to something approaching panic. Mum's hand flew to her throat as the deputy handed her an envelope. Robert and Linda Chen, the deputy said, loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. You're being served with papers regarding fraudulent property transfer and forgery in the matter of Chen v. Chen. The words cut through the elegant reception like a knife. Conversations stopped entirely. Sarah pushed back from her table and stood up. "What's happening?" she called out, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice calm and professional. "Mrs. Chen, this is regarding the illegal sale of property belonging to Madison Chen. The sale has been declared fraudulent due to forged signatures, and the property must be returned immediately." Sarah's face went white. "What property? What are you talking about?" Mum found her voice first, though it came out as more of a croak. "This is a mistake. This is our daughter's wedding." "Mum, fraud doesn't pause for special occasions," the deputy replied. "The court order requires immediate compliance. The current buyers of the property must be refunded within 30 days and the property returned to its rightful owner." Bradley stood up beside Sarah, looking bewildered. "What property? Sarah, what's he talking about?" That's when Sarah's eyes found mine across the room. I was still sitting calmly at my table, my hands folded in my lap, watching the scene unfold. "Madison?" Her voice was small, confused. "What's happening?" I stood up, slowly, aware that every person in that ballroom was staring at me. "What's happening, Sarah, is that Mum and Dad committed fraud to pay for your wedding." Gasps echoed through the room. Someone's champagne glass hit the floor with a crash. "They sold my lake house, the one Grandma left to me, by forging my signature. They spent the money on your dress, your flowers, your venue, your 4-tier cake with real gold leaf." My voice carried clearly in the silence. "Everything you see here tonight was paid for with stolen money." Sarah shook her head, backing away from the head table. "No, that's not... They said you gave permission. They said it was your wedding gift." "I never gave permission, Sarah. I didn't even know about it until a stranger called me to ask about mail forwarding." Dad finally found his voice, standing up with the court papers crumpled in his hand. "Madison, how could you do this? Today of all days." "How could I do this?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Dad, you forged my signature and stole my house. You committed multiple felonies to pay for a party, and you want to know how I could expose that?" "But it's Sarah's wedding day," Mum cried, mascara running down her cheeks. "And that makes fraud acceptable because it's for Sarah?" I looked around the room at the 200 shocked faces. For 28 years, I've watched this family sacrifice everything for Sarah's wants. My birthday parties got cancelled for her recitals. My graduation was overshadowed by her college applications. My achievements were ignored because her problems needed attention. My voice got stronger as I continued. "But this time, you didn't just ignore me or push me aside. You stole from me. You took the one thing my grandmother left me, the one thing that was actually mine, and you sold it like it was community property." Sarah was crying now, her perfect makeup running. "Madison, I swear I didn't know. I thought you agreed to help." "I did help, Sarah. I gave you $8,500 over the past year, but apparently that wasn't enough." Bradley put his arm around Sarah, looking angry. "So you decided to ruin our wedding? You couldn't handle this privately?" "I tried to handle it privately," I said evenly, "but Dad made it public when he announced my generous gift to a room full of 200 people. If you want to make my stolen inheritance into a public celebration, then we can publicly address the theft." The sheriff's deputy stepped forward again. "Ma'am, we'll need you and your parents to discuss the timeline for compliance with the court order. The current property owners are entitled to immediate refund plus damages." "Refund?" Dad's voice cracked. "We don't have the money anymore. It's all been spent." "Then you'll need to find it," Rodriguez said calmly. "The court doesn't care how you spent stolen money. You need to make the victims whole." Sarah collapsed into her chair, her hands covering her face. The sound of her sobbing echoed through the silent ballroom. Bradley knelt beside her, shooting daggers at me with his eyes. "How much?" Bradley demanded. "How much do they owe?" $200,000 for the house, plus legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress and fraud," Rodriguez answered. "Likely around $250,000 total." Several relatives gasped. Bradley's face went pale. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before building your wedding on stolen property," I said. Mum stood up, her legs shaky. "Madison, please, we're family. Can't we work something out? We can pay you back over time." "Family," I interrupted. "Mum, you forged my signature. You stole my house. You committed fraud against your own daughter to pay for a party. That's not family. That's criminal behavior." "We did it for love," Dad protested. "We did it for Sarah." "No, you did it because you've spent 28 years teaching yourselves that my needs don't matter, that my property isn't really mine, that everything I have should be available to make Sarah happy." I looked around the room one more time at all the relatives who'd toasted my generosity just minutes before. "You want to know what family really means? Family means respecting each other's boundaries. Family means not stealing from each other. Family means not forging signatures and committing fraud." Sarah looked up at me through her tears. "Madison, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." For a moment my resolve wavered. Sarah really hadn't known. She'd been raised to expect that everything would be handed to her, but she'd never asked anyone to commit fraud on her behalf. "I know you didn't know, Sarah," I said more gently. "But that doesn't change what happened. And it doesn't change the fact that Mum and Dad chose to steal from me rather than tell you they couldn't afford your dream wedding." Bradley stood up, his face red with anger. "So what happens now? Our wedding is ruined. We're out hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for what? Some old house?" "That old house," I said quietly, "was built by my grandfather's hands. My grandmother grew up there. 4 generations of our family created memories there. It was the last connection I had to the people who actually loved me unconditionally. So you'll destroy our marriage for a bunch of old memories?" I looked at Bradley, really looked at him and saw exactly the kind of man my parents had raised Sarah to expect. Someone who thought everything was owed to him. Someone who saw other people's treasures as obstacles to his own happiness. I'm not destroying your marriage, Bradley. I'm reclaiming my stolen property. What you and Sarah do with that information is up to you. The deputy cleared his throat. Folks, we need to wrap this up. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, you'll need to appear in court next Friday to discuss compliance with the restitution order. Miss Chen, he nodded to me. Your attorney will be in touch about the timeline for property recovery. As the deputies and Rodriguez prepared to leave, the ballroom remained frozen in awkward silence. 200 wedding guests sat with full plates of food, unsure whether to continue eating or leave. The band had stopped playing. Even the waitstaff had gathered by the walls to watch the drama unfold. Sarah stood up slowly, her dress wrinkled and stained with tears. What am I supposed to tell people? How do I explain this? I felt a surge of the old instinct to comfort her, to make everything okay, to sacrifice my own needs for her happiness, but I pushed it down. Tell them the truth, Sarah. Tell them that your parents committed fraud to pay for your wedding, and that has consequences. But everyone will think I knew. They'll think I was part of it. Then make it clear that you weren't. Take responsibility for the fact that you never questioned where the money came from, but make it clear you didn't ask them to steal it. Mom grabbed my arm as I started to walk away. Madison, please, we can fix this. We're family. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Mom, you stole from me. You looked me in the eye for weeks, accepting my congratulations on Sarah's beautiful wedding, knowing that you'd paid for it with my inheritance. That's not love. That's not family. That's betrayal. I gently removed her hand from my arm. The court order is clear. You have 30 days to return the money to the current property owners so I can get my house back. How you do that is up to you. We don't have that kind of money, Dad protested. Then you'll need to get creative. Maybe you can sell your house. Maybe you can take out loans. Maybe you can ask Sarah and Bradley to return all the wedding gifts and cancel the honeymoon. I shrugged. I don't really care how you do it. You created this problem when you decided to steal from me. You can figure out how to solve it. Sarah was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Madison, you've changed. You're not the sister I remember. You're right, I agreed. The sister you remember was a doormat. She was someone who would quietly accept being robbed by her own family to avoid making waves. She was someone who put everyone else's happiness before her own dignity. I picked up my purse from the table. That sister is gone, Sarah. She died the day you all decided that my inheritance was your inheritance, that my property was family property, that my grandmother's love for me was something you could sell for wedding decorations. As I walked toward the exit, relatives began approaching me, some offering support, others clearly torn between loyalty to my parents and shock at what they'd learned. I accepted the supportive comments graciously and ignored the disapproving looks. At the ballroom doors, I turned back one last time. Sarah was sitting at the head table in her wedding dress, surrounded by the ruins of her perfect day. Mum and Dad were huddled with some relatives, probably trying to figure out how to raise $250,000 in 30 days. Bradley was on his phone, likely calling lawyers or his parents or anyone who might be able to help. The scene should have made me feel guilty. For 28 years, it would have made me feel guilty. I would have rushed back, apologized, offered to drop the charges, figured out some way to make everyone else happy at my own expense. But sitting in my car in the parking lot, looking back at the elegant venue where my stolen inheritance had been transformed into one night of celebration, I felt something entirely different. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up in my downtown condo to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from my parents, ranging from angry to pleading to desperate. A few were from relatives who'd been at the wedding, some supportive, others critical. One was from Sarah, sent at 3 a.m. "Madison, please call me. We need to talk." I made coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the city wake up below me before dealing with any of it. For the first time in years, I felt completely calm. The anxiety that had been gnawing at my stomach for weeks was gone, replaced by a strange sense of peace. My phone rang. Sarah. "Madison?" Her voice was hoarse, probably from crying. "Are you there?" "I'm here." "Bradley left." I closed my eyes. "Sarah, I'm sorry." "He said he can't be married to someone whose family are criminals. He said he doesn't want to be associated with fraud and theft. He's talking about an annulment." "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say you'll drop the charges. I want you to say this was all some horrible mistake." Her voice broke. "I want my sister back." "Your sister is right here, Sarah. But she's not the same person who used to let this family walk all over her." "So you're going to destroy all of us? Mum and Dad might lose their house. My marriage is over before it started. The whole family is talking about this disaster. And for what? Some old house that you barely used anyway?" The words hit exactly where Sarah intended them to hit, but they didn't have the effect she wanted anymore. "Sarah, let me explain something to you. That house wasn't just property to me. It was the place Grandma taught me to fish. It was where I went when you all made me feel like I didn't belong in this family. It was where I kept photos of 4 generations of our relatives, where I had Grandpa's tools and Grandma's quilts and the rocking chair where she used to tell me stories." I paused, letting that sink in. When Mum and Dad sold that house, they didn't just take money from me. They sold my history. They sold my connection to the people who loved me. They sold my sanctuary. "But it's just stuff, Madison. It's just things." "No, Sarah, it's my heritage. And more than that, it's the principle. Mum and Dad decided that what was mine was actually theirs to give away. They decided that my needs didn't matter as much as your wants. They decided that they could commit fraud against their own daughter as long as it benefited their favourite daughter." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "I never asked them to do that." "I know you didn't, but you also never questioned where the money came from. $150,000, Sarah, for one day. Did it ever occur to you to wonder how parents who've been struggling financially for years suddenly had that kind of money?" Another pause. I thought maybe they'd been saving or took out loans." "Did you ask?" "No." The word was barely a whisper. "Because you didn't want to know, did you? You wanted your perfect wedding. And as long as someone else was paying for it, you didn't want to ask uncomfortable questions." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Sarah, you're 25 years old. You knew Mom and Dad were stressed about money. You knew they'd been asking me to contribute more than I could afford. But when they suddenly came up with enough money for your dream wedding, you just accepted it. You didn't question it because questioning it might have meant having a smaller wedding. I heard her crying on the other end of the line. I'm not trying to be cruel, Sarah, but I need you to understand that there are consequences for willful blindness. You chose not to ask where the money came from, and now you're dealing with the answer. So what happens now? Do I get my sister back, or are you just gone forever? The question hung in the air between us. It was the same question I'd been asking myself all morning. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I need my house back. I need Mum and Dad to face consequences for what they did. And I need time to figure out if there's anything left of this family worth saving. What does that mean? It means that for 28 years, I've been the one making compromises. I've been the one stepping aside, giving up, putting everyone else's needs first. I've been the daughter who didn't cause problems, didn't make demands, didn't expect much attention or celebration or respect. I stood up and walked to the edge of my balcony, looking out over the city I'd built my life in. But I can't be that person anymore, Sarah. I can't be the family member who quietly accepts being robbed. I can't pretend that blood automatically means loyalty or love or respect. So you're cutting us all off? I'm setting boundaries. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm saying that my needs matter too. My property is my property. My inheritance is my inheritance. My grandmother's love for me wasn't something that belonged to the whole family. But we are family, Madison. That has to count for something. It does count for something. It's why I'm not pressing criminal charges against Mom and Dad, even though what they did is a felony. It's why I'm willing to work with them on getting the money back instead of just seizing their house immediately. But it doesn't mean I have to pretend this didn't happen, and it doesn't mean I have to go back to being the family doormat. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, she sounded older somehow. I need to think about all this, about what you said, about the wedding and the money and everything. Take all the time you need. Madison? Yeah? I really am sorry about the house, about not asking questions, about all of it. I know you are, Sarah, and I'm sorry your wedding day got ruined. I really am. But I'm not sorry that the truth came out. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my condo for a long time. My phone kept buzzing with messages, relatives weighing in, friends who'd heard about the drama, even a few reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story. But I ignored all of it. Instead, I called Rodriguez. Madison, good morning. How are you holding up? I'm okay. What's the timeline looking like for getting my house back? Well, that depends on how quickly your parents can come up with the money. The current owners are being very understanding, but they want their money back before they'll vacate. Can't say I blame them. And if my parents can't get the money, then we proceed with seizure of assets, their house, their cars, whatever it takes to make you whole. But I suspect they'll find a way to avoid that. How? People usually do when they're facing the loss of everything they own. They'll take out loans, ask relatives for help. Maybe Sarah and her husband will step up. Her husband left her. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you, though? Or is that just what you're supposed to say? He chuckled. Madison, can I speak honestly? Please. In 30 years of practicing law, I've seen a lot of family disputes. Most of them involve people who've been taken advantage of for years, finally reaching their breaking point. And in my experience, the people who get angry when someone finally stands up for themselves are usually the ones who've been benefiting from that person staying down. Meaning that anyone who's upset with you for reclaiming your stolen property was probably counting on you staying the kind of person who'd quietly accept being robbed. The fact that you're not willing to be that person anymore is threatening to them. I thought about that as I got dressed and prepared to face whatever came next. Rodriguez was right. The anger directed at me wasn't really about the timing or the method or the disruption to Sarah's wedding. It was about the fact that I'd changed the rules of the game. I'd stopped accepting scraps and started demanding respect. That afternoon, Mum and Dad showed up at my condo unannounced. The doorman called up to ask if I wanted to see them, and for a moment I considered saying no. But eventually we were going to have this conversation. They looked terrible. Mum's eyes were swollen from crying, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. They sat on my couch like strangers, unsure how to start. "Madison," Mum began, "we need to talk about this situation." "What situation would that be, Mom?" "The situation where you committed fraud against your own daughter." Dad leaned forward. "Madison, we know you're angry." "I'm not angry, Dad. I'm done." "Done with what?" "Done being the family member whose needs don't matter. Done being the daughter whose property isn't really hers. Done pretending that loving someone gives you the right to steal from them." Mum started crying again. "We never meant for it to go this far. We thought you'd understand." "Understand what? That Sarah's wedding was more important than my inheritance? That her happiness mattered more than my grandmother's wishes? That your financial problems gave you the right to forge my signature?" "We were desperate," Dad said quietly. "Sarah had her heart set on this wedding. We'd already put deposits down everywhere. We couldn't disappoint her. So instead, you disappointed me. You're successful, Madison. You have your own life, your own money, your own future. Sarah needed this wedding to start her life with Bradley. And how did that work out for her?" They both flinched. Dad ran his hands through his hair. "Look, we know we made mistakes, but destroying the whole family isn't going to fix anything." "I'm not destroying the family, Dad. I'm just refusing to be destroyed by it." We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Mum spoke up. "What do we have to do to make this right?" "Give me my house back." "You know we don't have the money." "Then you'll need to find it. Sell your house. Take out loans. Ask relatives for help. I don't care how you do it, but you need to make the current owners whole so I can get my property back." "And then what?" Dad asked. "Do we have a relationship after that, or is this family just over?" I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and tried to see past the hurt and anger to figure out what I actually wanted. "I don't know," I said finally. "Right now, I need you to understand that what you did was wrong. Not just illegal, morally wrong. You violated my trust in the deepest possible way. You took something that belonged to me and sold it without my knowledge or consent. You forged my signature. You committed fraud against your own daughter." "We know." Do you? Because every conversation we've had since this came out has been about how I'm overreacting, or how I'm destroying the family, or how I should have handled this differently. Nobody has actually acknowledged that you committed serious crimes against me. Mum looked up from her tissues. We're acknowledging it now. Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught? The question hung in the air. After a long pause, Dad answered. Both, I think. We're sorry we got caught because it's destroying our family. But we're also sorry we did it because it was wrong. It wasn't the complete acknowledgement I'd hoped for, but it was more than I'd gotten from them so far. Okay, I said. That's a start. Now prove it. Get me my house back. All of it. The property, the contents, everything. Make the current owners whole. Face the consequences of what you did. And then? And then we'll see if there's anything left of this family worth rebuilding. They left that evening with a clear understanding of what needed to happen. 2 weeks later, Rodriguez called with good news. Your parents secured a loan against their house. The current owners will be refunded and you'll have your property back within the month. What kind of loan? Second mortgage, high interest rate, but they qualified. It'll probably take them years to pay it off, but they'll keep their house. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I'd get my grandmother's house back. Sadness that it had come to this, that my parents had been willing to risk everything rather than admit they couldn't afford Sarah's dream wedding. A month later, I drove back to the lake house for the first time since my parents had sold it. The current owners had been kind enough to leave it exactly as they'd found it, and I spent the afternoon walking through rooms filled with 4 generations of family memories. In my grandmother's bedroom, I found the photo album she'd kept by her bedside. Pictures of our family going back to the 1940s. Photos of my grandfather building the house, of my grandmother as a young mother, of my parents as children, of Sarah and me as babies. Looking through those pictures, I tried to remember when things had gone so wrong. When had my parents decided that Sarah's needs automatically trumped mine? When had they started seeing my success as evidence that I didn't need their support or attention? When had they begun to believe that my property was somehow communal family property? I never found a clear answer. Maybe it had been gradual, a series of small choices that had added up to something devastating. Maybe they'd always seen me as the strong one, the independent one, the one who could handle disappointment. Maybe they'd convinced themselves that taking from me to give to Sarah was somehow fair. What I did know was that I couldn't go back to being the person who accepted that treatment. I couldn't pretend that blood automatically meant respect or love or consideration. I couldn't be the family member who quietly sacrificed her own needs to keep everyone else comfortable. Sarah called me a few weeks after I'd moved back into the lake house. Madison, it's me. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing? I'm getting better. Bradley and I are in counselling, trying to figure out if we can save our marriage. He's struggling with the idea that his wife comes from a family of criminals. How do you feel about that? Honestly, I'm struggling with it too. I keep thinking about what you said about how I didn't ask where the money came from because I didn't want to know. You were right. I was willfully blind because it was easier than having a smaller wedding. It takes courage to admit that. I'm trying to be more honest with myself about a lot of things. including the way our family treated you. I didn't respond immediately, letting her continue. I've been thinking about all the times you got pushed aside for my stuff. All the times your achievements got overshadowed by my problems. All the times Mum and Dad made it clear that my happiness was more important than yours. And I let it happen. I liked being the favourite. I liked getting the attention and the support and the resources. I never stood up for you when you should have been celebrated. I never questioned why everything always had to be about me. It was the most honest conversation Sarah and I had ever had. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. I want to be a better sister, Madison. I want to be someone who sees you as an equal, not as someone whose job is to support my dreams. I want to be someone who celebrates your successes instead of just expecting your help with my problems. I'd like that too. Can we try? Can we start over and try to be real sisters instead of whatever we were before? I looked out at the lake, watching the sunset paint the water gold and orange, just like it had the night I'd promised myself I wouldn't let them take this away from me. I think we can try, I said, but it's going to be different, Sarah. I'm not going back to being the sister who puts everyone else's needs first. I'm not going to be the family member who quietly accepts whatever scraps get thrown my way. I know, and I don't want you to be that person anymore either. I want a sister who stands up for herself. I want a sister who expects to be treated with respect. Even if that means sometimes I'll say no to things you want, especially then. We talked for another hour, making plans to see each other again soon. Not for a family obligation or a crisis, but just because we wanted to spend time together as adults who chose to be in each other's lives. After we hung up, I sat on the dock where my grandmother and I used to fish, watching the stars come out over the water. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about my family relationships. Not because everything was fixed, my parents and I still had a lot of work to do, but because people were finally telling the truth about what had happened, the truth about the patterns that had led us there, the truth about what needed to change if we were going to move forward as a family. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Bradley. Sarah gave me your number. I owe you an apology. I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you instead of dealing with the real problem. Sarah and I are working on things, and part of that is me understanding that you did what you had to do. Thank you for standing up for yourself. It's helping Sarah learn to stand up for herself too." I smiled and put the phone away. Sometimes the people who get angriest when you set boundaries are the ones who most needed you to set them. Bradley's initial reaction had been terrible, but maybe watching me refuse to be a doormat was teaching both him and Sarah something about healthy relationships. 3 months later, my parents came to visit the lake house. It was awkward at first, none of us quite sure how to navigate this new dynamic where I expected to be treated as an equal rather than a supporting character in Sarah's story. But slowly, carefully, we began to build something different, something more honest, something based on mutual respect rather than assumed obligation. It wasn't the family I'd grown up in, but it was better. It was real. It was built on truth instead of resentment, boundaries instead of exploitation, choice instead of guilt. And sitting on that dock where 4 generations of my family had made memories, I finally felt like I belonged there. Not as someone who had to earn her place by sacrificing herself for others, but as someone who deserved love and respect simply because she existed. It had cost me a wedding, a year of family drama, and nearly losing relationships that meant everything to me. But I'd gotten something more valuable in return. My dignity, my inheritance, and a family that finally saw me as I truly was. Not as a supporting character in someone else's story, but as the main character in my own.